All right, let's go. Good morning. Wednesday, April 22nd. No major economic headlines scheduled for this morning, but we do have crude oil inventories at 10:30. So we need to be mindful of that with the Iran conflict. Markets yesterday did one of the things that we thought it might do, which would be to test the gap range that it created at the high of 790, thereabouts, here on the TPO chart. So now that we've accomplished that, I would suspect that we have balance here. We're probably going to test higher to see if we can find balance higher now. So we test lower, we've rejected the gap, we've come up, we're above balance from Monday. So we'll see where the market wants to go today. Not a whole lot of news coming out overnight about the war. Trump just came out and said Iran talks possible as soon as Friday. I think they were originally scheduled for Wednesday, but then Iranians didn't want to talk. I think JD Vance is on his way to Islamabad. So who knows what headlines are going to come out today. So something to be mindful of. We're not going to avoid trading because of potential of adverse headlines. We'll just be mindful of it as we trade and try to set wider stops on smaller positions, so the volatility of news releases doesn't just spike and get us out of good trades. So not a ton of large contract activity before the open. Last one was at 924 at 150 and a quarter. So let's see what the open brings. See where the market wants to go up here. You can see the weekly distribution. We're kind of right in the top end of the value range. So potentially this is an area you could resist right here, is the 145s, this low volume area. But I don't just want to jump in right at the open on the first rejection of 145. I want to give this market a little bit of wiggle room this morning. I don't want to have an overwhelming bias to the upside, but just based on what occurred yesterday, where you tested the top of the gap range, rejected it, and now have come back above the balance range from Monday. Either one, you're going to balance today in this area again around 150, or you're going to start to do a little price discovery move higher to see if you can find balance up there. So generally, I want to lean long today, but I will also want the order flow and everything else to confirm that. We don't just want to blindly jump long at certain levels. We don't really trade levels. We trade interactions of those levels, whether or not there's acceptance or rejection of the order flow when it gets there. Can't just blindly get in at 145. All right, you got to see where the volume comes in, whether or not it lifts price, pushes price down. What are the ranges looking like? Where are the large orders coming in at? What's absorption look like? Those are all things we need to be considering. So in the first minute, we've got 12,000 contracts. That's pretty light. Pretty light. So market may not be super interested in staying around these levels because that's pretty light volume. Doesn't seem to be heavy participation here. See what happens if we come down and test 145 again, see where the volume comes in. And that's the top of the value range from yesterday. It was 138. It's a top of the timed distribution range too from the afternoon. But we're getting some absorption up around 150, and it's pretty heavy absorption numbers. But I think, was that pre-market? Yeah, that was pre-market. That was right before the market opened. So we're not going to weigh that information too heavily, but that is a pretty big absorption number to be pre-market. So volume coming in, still pushing price down. Right, volume push price down here, volume push price down here. Now you're getting the volume to come in at 148 and lift things. I want to see us push more into this low volume area and reject it. We're kind of spending a lot of time here down towards the bottom of this distribution. All right, we're not quickly just snapping and rejecting this. And you're still getting heavy cell absorption numbers here. No large contracts traded since the open. There wasn't even any at the open. So we're gonna give this a little more time here. And this is pretty heavy absorption up here. But if you can snap this range and come back and retest it, I mean, that is a good long, I think, right there. All right, volume coming in and lifting price. All right, we seem to be trying to at least resist 147. But I mean, this is heavy absorption we'd be trading into, so I don't want to take a long just yet. See if you get more volume to come in here and lift things up again. But the market wasn't really interested in, and there was very heavy buyer participation down here. The prices would just quickly snap back up. All right, you do get volume coming in here. But you'd probably want a quicker snap out of here. So just being patient. All right, volume came in at 146, pushed it lower. Volume came in at 143, but didn't reject it. And it just kind of held price where it was. So let's see how low we get on the testing. This is kind of like right before the pre-market, the 9 o'clock lows down here at 138, 140. Distribution POC for the week is at 137. All right, and that was right about where the market balanced on Monday. I'll be interested to see what happens if you make a test of this low volume area at 145. Still nothing over 100 contracts has transacted since the cash open this morning. So when the volume came in at the lows, it didn't necessarily reject and push up price. Right, price closed below where all the volume came in, and where all the volume's coming in at this bar is suppressing price. Like the overall general theme, I want to lean long, right? But some of this order flow right now is telling me that like that may not be the best bet right now. Just because we're getting all this absorption up here as price tries to move higher, volume continues to push price lower or hold price from advancing. All right, so this isn't indicative of a good long just yet. All right, you had quicker rejection of the highs here at 150 than you had at the lows. So volume is coming in now, pushing price higher. Nothing of size. Market on open imbalance for the S&Ps was almost plus 300 million. That's some good size. Very tight range. Very, very tight range. We're almost 10 minutes into the open. The highs at 152, lows at 141. This is a very tight range. We got to be patient with this. There's no scalp trades in this because this range is just too narrow. It's a very normalized distribution, but it's just way too narrow to trade within. I like trades out of this. Out of narrow ranges, when you break the narrow range and then come test back into the range, those are good trades for narrow distributions. So again, all the volume that's coming in isn't necessarily advancing price. It's holding price down. Right? The volume came in here at the top of the green bar. Volume came here at the top of the green bar. Volume's in here, pushing price down. Well, this can all change in a moment. I'm curious to see what happens when we get up to 150 again. Right? Because there's a lot of absorption up here. I don't want to get long at the bottom of this distribution in hopes that we're going to break through all this absorption and sell side activity. I would like to see us break it first, retest it, and then get long. That's the higher probability trade in this. Volume coming in, suppressing price. The order flow remains pretty bearish here. Distribution wise, we're entertaining the idea of longs over shorts, but this order flow isn't backing the idea at the moment. Even though price is advancing, the way the volume's coming in and where the volume's coming in and what happens to price when that volume comes in is telling us a lot. You want to start seeing the volume lift price, not suppressing or holding price. Yeah, see, sellers are still present up here at 150. Still no large contracts being traded, nothing over 100 contracts being traded. No signs of the institutions yet this morning. And we're just kind of flopping around this upper distribution node here, centered around 147. All right, test the downside, test the upside, but you seem to be holding the high side at 147. Nice injection of volume there. But price immediately rejects 150. Yeah. And then the order flow is screaming bearish as of this moment. All right, where all the majority of the volumes coming in is suppressing price. This is a pretty quick rejection. This is a good attempt higher. It's a lot of volume that came in and it just got nowhere. So I think you now run these lows down at 140 and see what happens. Or we could just hold around this POC around 147, around the center of this distribution node. When was this created? I think it was created on Monday. Yeah, it's probably created on Monday. Yeah, so this is a balanced node up here. Right, yep. Created on Monday, right there. Right during the open. So this could just be an acceptable price range for right now, right? You just go a little under 147, come up a little above 147, and then it's mean reversion. There's no directional move. All right, I would really like to see institutions show their hand a little bit. I still think the next move, based off this quick rejection here and where the volume came in and suppressed price, I still think the next move is down to 141 before you test up here again. But that's not something I want to trade. Pretty big gap from where we closed yesterday, the RTH session, which was around 7,100. Maybe it wants to test that gap range a little bit, perhaps. That would be far down the distribution from yesterday, though. I don't think he'd go back down there. All right, we tested this in the afternoon and rejected 7,100. Didn't spend much time there. I don't think you'd want to spend time down there again. And I'm starting to see some buyers coming in at higher prices. This is the first sign of buyer absorption we've seen thus far this morning. Everything else has been on the sell side. Again, I still think the bullish thesis is good. All the sell side absorption hasn't gotten anywhere. They've met you here, right? They're responsively selling, but they're not taking the initiative to sell it lower. I think that's pretty telling. Right? This is why my bullish thesis still remains pretty solid, I think. Just I'm waiting for order flow to turn bullish, and then I'll get behind it. Right now, this is all just bearish order flow. All the volume that comes in is just holding down price. You have some that comes in here at 145 that lifts price, but I mean, it's not lifting price a ton. So until that changes, and potentially until we break the absorption here at 149, 150, I don't think we can go long until this is broken and retested. So we got to wait for the order flow shift. Even though the order flow is bearish, I don't think this is a good short. So I don't see anything in terms of headlines since 9:21 this morning, which is good. Quiet markets tend to be more tradable markets. So let's see if the sellers again come in at this 149, 150 area and push things lower. You finally start to head some of the volume, lift price. All right, again, it just seems to be responsive selling. It's not initiative selling. Iran has not yet decided to hold discussions on Friday. 9:46 headline. So that would be pretty bearish. And let's see how the market reacts. Again, we have a kind of a bullish bias based on the distribution and how things played out over the last 2 days and where we are in the distribution. The order flow is finally starting to turn positive. All right, volume is lifting price. We're trying to break out of this little pre-market range here. All right, volume came in right above the value area high. All right, so if we want to see tests of 149 and 150 where volume comes in and holds it. You want to see a test lower now and trying to get back into this prior established range, this pre-market range. And you want to see the volume come in and reject it. Kind of like that. You'd want the volume really probably to come in lower. And you'd want a quicker snap out of this. Give it a little more time, I think. Yeah, because now we got seller absorption that came in just slightly higher, which isn't necessarily bearish, right? If it was bearish, you'd come in at lower prices. White House, Trump extended Iran ceasefire for 3 to 5 days. Okay, way to be very specific. Seems like you should be pretty specific when it comes to blockades and bombings and ceasefires. Yeah, 3 to 5 days, whatever, maybe 7, maybe 4. All right, so that's not what you wanted to see. We tested outside the range, and we had a quick rejection, and we now fell back into the range. So the next step now is to test the bottom of the range. All right. So the volume is coming in, is still suppressing price. Yeah, I still don't like the short though, again, because of the narrative I've developed about how the distributions have played out this week. With the test lower on Tuesday to fill the gap from last week, it rejected it, came back up, and we're kind of still above the POC from Monday on that very balanced range. It's a very balanced, solid foundational range. So this area is now key going forward. All right, so you tested the top side of the range, you failed it, volume came in, pushed price lower, and now we're looking to test the bottom of the range. Again, I didn't want to short this, even though like there's probably a good scalp short in here to the bottom of the range. I don't like it because of the bullish theme that I have. So finally, someone came in at 949 at 143 and sold, which was right here. All right, so you finally had an institution come in and sell at 143, which could just be an absorbed bottom. And we're kind of struggling to get outside this value range here. All right, well, you didn't reject this until we got to the highs of the distribution. We're looking like we're going to reject this right at the value area low, unless a bunch more volume comes in and continues to push price lower. Yeah, see, but all the volume coming in here is lifting price. That's pretty bullish. And it's happening right outside value. And now you close below it. So just trying to think about picking a spot for a long. All right, I still like the bullish theme. I mean, the news this morning on Iran is pretty negative, to be honest. Order flow has mostly been negative, but then flipped positive and now turned negative again. We can get an order flow shift positive down here, down to lows, right on top of the value range from yesterday at 139. Right, I think it's a good long. But I want to see some bullish order flow. I'm just not there yet. And you might have got a little bit of it right there. All right, let's limit 143.50 on quarter position. Stop it at 138. This is a pretty decent quick rejection of out of value here. And we quickly came back into value. The volume is lifting price for the most part. I want us to close above this, but I also want to get filled at 143.50, please. Which I think is too low. We'll do 144. Yeah, if I don't get in, oh well. Yeah, shit. It's going to leave us behind. Shabam. Buggers. All right, so we'll cancel those orders. We'll wait for another sign or another spot we can get in at. Those sellers coming in lower. Maybe we make another test outside of value, quickly reject it on volume. That would be ideal. You want to see an inability to get back outside value here. I mean, these are pretty good signs. Yeah. Try a 145 limit. Stop below that volume at 141. Volume still holding up price. I'm being probably too stringent with my limit orders here, trying to get in, because I'm putting them like below where the volume is lifting price. So the seller at 143 is still kind of trapped down here. Sold right here. Right? What time was it at? 9:49. Or was it right here? Right here. Right here. So we tried to get long here down at the bottom. Volume came in, lifted price, quick rejection. So now we need another test lower for volume to come in and reject it and to try to limit order and get in again. But that was just me placing limit orders below the volume, which wasn't great. So now we're coming up towards the top of the range again. So it's pretty much playing out exactly as we thought this would play out. We tested the top of the range, quickly rejected, came back in, volume came in, pushed price lower. Then we tested the bottom of the range. Didn't make it all the way to the bottom. And then volume came in, pushed things up. And now you're going to test the top of the range again. And this is the new top of the defined range. And this is still a very narrow range for the day. This is insane. This is a lot of compression here. So let's see what happens as we come back to test the center of this distribution around the POC around 146.5. If volume comes in there and lifts price and we're unable to get below the POC, then I will consider the long attempt again. But we've tried to get in a couple times with limit orders and the market just kind of left us behind. Once at 143.50 and then the other time at 145. You're seeing the volume coming into the POC just like we thought. But we want to give this a little bit of time and let this play out a little bit. Very tight range. And you really don't want to see price close below this. All right, if you're thinking this is going to be a breakout attempt of these highs, you do it from here. You want to do it from down here. Because if bulls are serious, if they just bought this up, they'll buy it up here too. They're not going to wait for price to get down here. If they're really aggressive about it, they'll buy it here, which they kind of are doing. So we'll put a little piece on. I'm just going to buy it at the market at 48 3/4. I'll stop it at 42 because this is only a quarter position. I wouldn't think you'd get back outside the value area low at all. And just because his volume came in at the POC, and this could just be arranged, we could be in a really bad spot. So we're going to keep it at a quarter position until we see more definitive proof that we're going to hold this center area. Because while that order flow is good, right, the volume comes in, lifts price at a spot that we looked good, the POC, but just the fact that you're at the POC and you can get a lot of volatility around this area here, we're going to keep things light for the moment. If we push higher up towards this, hang out here, come back down and quickly reject this value area high, that's going to be one scenario to add. Another scenario to add is a clean break of this and a retest of this I'd probably add even more. So we're just long a quarter piece at 48.75 at the POC because we had volume come in and lift price. All right, this is still this is bullish order flow. We're now matched up with our daily thesis, which was pretty bullish. But just because the spot in which this is happening and we're close towards an area where sellers have come in, quarter position. This is just a little stab to see if we can't break these highs or develop some higher resistance, right? Where price comes up, tests the high, but really just it can't come back down into this area, which would be like 149, 150, the value area high of this distribution. So we'll just leave the quarter piece on long at 48.75. The stop is still down at 42. We'll see what the interaction looks like at the highs and make a determination about the stop then. If we spend a lot of time up near 153 and we're accepting prices higher, we're resistant to go lower, we can allow a little wiggle room with the stop. All right, because we don't want to be taken out on a volatility spike. But if we get outside that range and quickly reject it, I'll probably just go to break even. Yeah, no signs of large transactions. I'd imagine they'd come in after the break of the range and on the retest. So you got a big buyer at 153. That just literally came in as I said it. All right, so we don't want to see resistance right here at 153 because that means he just got absorbed for 277 contracts. It's pretty heavy. I want to see resistance to this being able to come back into the value area high now. All right, give me a clean break and then strong resistance volume coming in and lifting price up again, and we'll load up. All right, so break even at 149 on the stop, just above our entry at 48.75. Now I want to see prices come back down, test the top of this range right here, 151 to 149, somewhere in here, and then volume to come in and resist it, and a quick rejection. I want to snap out. Once I see a quick rejection, and we're loading. Because these very tight distributions that form in the morning only have one or two outcomes. One, you just remain in a balanced range and you just gradually add to the high, and you gradually add to the low, and you just go back and forth the remainder of the day. The second scenario is you have huge breakouts. Does this look like a huge breakout move at the moment? Not really. I mean, you're adding some pretty good volume up here, but it's not rapid. You're not having super quick rotations, not a ton of volume being built. And just let this one run a little bit. I don't want to choke this at all. All right, I'm looking to add, not to stop, not to trail a stop. Once I start adding to this, if I can, then I'll start trailing stops. But who knows? It might not even give me any sort of retracement to get in. And I think we're absolutely correct on the quarter position because the entry was at the POC. I think that's absolutely correct. I'd be willing to move my stop, right? We should not want to come into this range at all. If this is strongly bullish, we're going to reject up here at 152. Our stop is at 149. Yeah, I mean, we can move it to 150. I mean, protect some profits, right? But this is what you want to see. I wanted to see this test lower, but potentially we'll be adding up here. How much time's left in this? 10 seconds. Let's see if we get another test lower and another volume, more volume to come in and reject it. Because now we're above the weekly value area high too. All right. So the whole thesis of this morning is based on what the distribution did in the last 2 days. We had a balance range on Monday. Tuesday tested the gap from last week, rejected it, and we came back above balance from Monday. The next likely move in auction theory is you now do a price discovery higher to see if you can hold and find balance higher. This is what the market was doing. And now, even though all the order flow in the morning was telling you you should probably sell me, we didn't sell because of the overall narrative, and we just waited for the order flow to shift. All right, now I want to see a lot of volume come in here and reject this. All right, give me a quick rejection. Not quite what I was looking for, right? So I'll just leave the stop at 150. All right, the volume came in, but price did not hold above it. Price hold it below this little volume distribution right here. And this is kind of the area I suspected that would be the best test right here at 152. It is the top of the range that saw seller absorption. Now we want volume to come in and lift price very definitively. And you'd want a quick rejection. You don't want to hover here. So stops at 150. It's a pretty safe stop. All right. If it comes and tests here, like I would think this should be the bottom. Right. We should see a lot of volume come in right about here and lift price. We want to see a quick rejection. You're not getting that quick rejection. We're probably going to get stopped out on this attempt long. Unless it changes its path right now. Right here at 151. Yeah, and it stopped us out at 150. All right, the volume just came in and pushed price right back into the range. So that's not the breakout you were looking for. Definitely not. We gave it a shot. Good entry. But we had to wait for this test at the top of the range here, right? You couldn't just exit up here and be like, okay, take profits here. We needed to know that the market was not interested in continuing long above this range. If it was, if bulls were really strong, they would have bought up right here, and they didn't. So I'm just trying to look at the large orders where large orders came in at 1002. There's a buyer at 57 and a quarter, right? So he's the one that got absorbed and we were talking about. And then the seller came in at 53 after the fact at 1003. So right here. There's this guy right here. So again, based on what we just had happen, we had a break of the prior range. I mean, this is a pretty decent quick rejection here, right? This happened kind of quickly. Like we immediately came back down again. So now you're more likely to test the bottom of the range. You do have volume coming in at the POC lifting things, which is bullish. I don't think we reload here though, just because we just had another attempted break and it just did not work. But who knows? Maybe we break this 153 seller here. But let's just be patient now, because we're attempting to break out the range and we're just not able to do so. And the market could have just wanted to shake me out, you know? And now all the volume's coming in, lifting price pretty heavily. All right, you've broken that 153 seller. Like if the bulls were serious about this and trending this, I don't think you let it come this far back into value. I don't think you would have done that. I'm gonna look at the news real quick, just make sure there hasn't been any crazy headlines. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is testifying. Trade Representative Greer is also testifying. I don't think that's major headlines. So sellers coming back in. I want to see. Okay, so let's talk about some scenarios in which we can re-engage this to the long side, right? Because the seller at 153 has been snapped. Maybe a test back of his position back towards the value area high. Or maybe even in this gap around 153. If we see a test back into this region, volume come in and to lift price. If we get the bullishness up here in the order flow, we'll engage. Because this absorption is happening at higher prices, right? They tried to hold down here at 151, 152, and they couldn't. And they tried to push it back down again into value, and they could not hold it. This is pretty quick coming out of it, right? You went back into value and quickly came out of it. So possibly a test of 154, 153, where this volume is on this move outside of value, where the volume came in. Let's see if we can get a test down here with volume to come in and lift price again, and then we'll start adding positions. This is not a short, though. Absolutely not. Because we, one, be fighting against the narrative of the auction theory, which is telling us that we should be, looking for price discovery higher today. And then also the fact that you're kind of hanging around the highs now without the quick rejection. And we keep hanging out at higher prices. Like we're slightly trending up. You're ever so slightly trending up. Okay, so this is the area we're speculating. Did the volume come in there? No, the volume was up here. All right, you want to see the volume coming down here and lift price. You want to see buyers reload. All right, and there'll be a ton of volume lift in price. And all the volume up here is still around this 156 POC. All the volume is right here, and it's still suppressing price a little bit. It's not a short, absolutely not, because we're compressing, we're overlapping our rotations up here at 156. This is a long, but I'm being very nitpicky about what it is that I want for my long. Like I wanted the volume to come in down here at 154, 153, and then lift the price. All right, but you might not even get it. So volume came in, didn't really reject price all that hard. It held it though. So I'm still looking for that same exact thing. I want volume to come in where this volume came in to lift prices out of the range. I want to see a lot of volume come in and lift things. Yeah, it's borderline. It really is. All right, that's what I wanted it to look like. I wanted it to look like that a little bit lower. No signs of large transactions up here other than the one buy at 57 and a quarter earlier. The seller at 153 is underwater. All right, I'm going to buy a piece at 56 and 3/4. I will stop it at 150 and a half. Just a quarter position for now. I'll add to it if we come back towards the value area high, like 52, 53, and get what I was originally looking for with that volume coming in and lifting price. But the fact we're hanging out here at the highs, we're not quickly rejecting this. I'm fairly certain this breaks out higher, but I don't know if we're going to come down and test the value area high first again. All right, we're hanging out here. We're getting the overlapping rotations. This isn't a quick, what you call a quick time rejection, right? This is price acceptance up here. You're building value up here, volume, the rotations are overlapping. You're building volume. But this is kind of mixed order flow up here. Yeah, we're testing the value area high of the weekly distribution as well, which is at 155.5, just about right there. And we're hanging out just above it. Right, you didn't quickly reject and go right back into value. Now you're hanging out above the value area high. It's bullish. No, I just want bullish order flow and good entries. Don't want to be chasing things. I want to try to get pullbacks, volume come in to lift price in meaningful spots. I still think the market is more interested in doing price discovery higher than it is lower today, just based off what we did yesterday with the distribution. You tested lower into the gap from last week, rejected it, came back higher, or above balance from Monday. Let's do a little price discovery, try to find balance. And if you don't, then the markets will revert back down to the 145, 150 area. Right, but I want some good, clean, bullish order flow for me to load up on this position. Right, you're trying to make these pushes higher. You got buyers coming in at 159, so we're above the 157 and a quarter, 153 sellers underwater. Had a buyer at 159. All right, so let's see what we can get to start adding to some positions. Right, so this is the good reference range right here, 158. This 158 ledge. We want to see test back into this little bit of a range and markets to quickly reject it on volume. Okay, our entry was at 56 and 3/4, right below 157. We can probably move it to break even because if this is bullish, you're going to resist the top of this range at 158. So I'll move it to 157. So just above break even, try to pay for our transaction costs if we can. But let's try to get a retracement into a low volume area, preferably the top of this right here at 158. Volume to come in, lift price, keep the bullish order flow theme intact, and we'll add to the position again. In fact, any resistance, strong resistance, volume comes in and lifts price anywhere in this 159, 160 area would probably be doable as well. But let's see it happen first before we start committing. We're not just going to blindly put a limit order here at 159, 160 until we see what the order flow does here at this level. You don't trade the level, you trade the interaction at the level. So the stop is at 157. This is our second attempted long today. We were pretty much break even on the first one. We allowed a lot of wiggle room with the stop. All right, now you want to see a lot of volume come in and lift price. Just like that. So I'll limit 160, 150. Okay, so now our break even is 59 and a quarter. Again, I don't think coming back into this prior range is doable. So like a 57 stop on everything, I think is okay. Because that'd be pretty bearish if you got down to, you know what, do it 156. Right? I still think you can come to the top of this range at 157. I think it can tap 157. I don't think you tap 156 on a strong bullish move up. All right, so we had volume come in to low volume area, lift price. We have large institutional orders supporting this. Last one at 159. All right, there it is, right there on the footprint. The only seller was at 153, and he got trapped. All right, we're in for a half position now total. See if we can extend towards the high of the weekly distribution, which is up above 170. But we don't want to build any volume here at 159 and push below it. Right? Any volume that comes in here needs to lift price. I'm okay with volume coming in at 161 and suppressing price because it's right at the center of this little small distribution node. But any volume that comes in here lower and suppresses price is not good. And we'll probably look to start unwinding because our average now is 59 and a quarter. We've got a pretty weak long position here. Our first entry was what? 56 and 3/4. So no large transactions. Still kind of a precarious long here. We didn't quickly reject these highs though. So I think we're still pretty good. All right, you're getting overlapped rotations. You're not getting a very quick rejection of this. You're kind of hanging out up here, which is kind of good for a long. All right, this is definitely not a short. But the question is, how precarious is the long? All right, the higher you buy on the trend, the more precarious you get. The more sensitive to adverse price movements you become. All right, and any break of this, our stop gets moved to break even. If we make a break of this range and quickly come back into it, yeah, I think we'll just look to get out of the trade. But I still get the impression that you're going to make it a little bit of a move higher, just where this trend is going today. All right, you want volume to come in here and really lift price out of this, though. Because this just could be a normalized distribution here around where the balance was from Monday. All right, the top of the balance from Monday was at 160. All right, you might not make it too far out of that range. And we're coming up on a low volume area on the weekly distribution. So we could get some resistance here. Yeah, I don't necessarily want to move the stop because potentially it can come down here again, right? You could just be extending this range a little bit. It depends how far of a move you make away from this. The farther you get away from this, the more we've got to move our stop. All right, so we'll move to 159.50, break even, just above on the full half position. So let's see where the volume comes in, how far we can push this, and whether or not we can continue to build volume. No, you don't want to see it come back down to 161 for sure. Yeah, full stop at 161 and protect profits. The flow that's still coming in, the volume that's still coming in is still lifting price. So that's good. That's still good. Make sure you guys can see this. Yeah, looks good. Okay. But you see how we're kind of diminishing in volume. We're not leaving a low volume area here. So this isn't a good clean break. This is just a slight extenuation of the distribution for the day. So I now suspect price is going to overlap pretty heavily. All right, you come down here. Yeah, 161 is a good stop on all of this. If this is bullish, volume's coming in right here and lifting this. You won't get down here. That's pretty bearish order flow right there, up at 165. No large orders, though. And this is also bearish. All right, you didn't have a clean break of this range. All right, you're definitely going to come back down and test 159, I think, again. So we'll sell a piece at 163 if we can get it out. Or all of it's going out at 161. Yeah, and now you've had 2 consecutive candles where the volume came in and pushed price lower. So unless volume comes in right now and lifts price right here, you know what? I'm going to cancel the 163 until I see the conclusion right here, because this is where the POC is. Yeah, and we got stopped at 161. That's fine. That's fine. Slight profit on that trade. So the first one was kind of break even. The second one was a little more profitable, but only got a couple points out of it. And see, now the volume's coming in here. It's like one of the things I try to tell myself, don't put stops where you would just potentially add to your position. And this is essentially the limit of where I would add. All right, in this low volume area on the weekly, 160. Yeah. Right, and then we're just going to watch this push higher now. Right, because that volume came in exactly kind of where you wanted it to come in at. All right, that would be a position add right there. $10.14 was the last large transaction at 159. 10.14. It's right here. So nothing else is coming in outside of that. If we get another test into this low volume area and we see another development just like this, where the volume comes in and lifts price out of the low volume area, we can try the longs again. Why not? Because the bullish order flow is matching the bullish thesis. This is our entries today. Haven't been the greatest, but I don't know if we could have done better based off what this flow has been telling us today. All right, because you got to wait for the order flow to shift and match your narrative for the distributions. So let's see if we come back down here to 162 and test right below and see if you get volume coming in. But this taper off of the distribution towards the top, and that we're getting towards the top of the taper distribution on the weekly, well, like the probabilities are decreasing here the higher we get up here. Just the way this distribution looks for the week. It's a pretty normalized distribution at this point. So like 159, 160 are good longs. Better longs would be 156. But if bulls were serious, they're not getting it below 160. They're not going to tap into this prior range. Yeah, this is just responsive selling. This isn't initiative selling. So sellers are just responding, but they're not actively taking prices lower. This isn't a quick rejection out of this area, right? We're just building volume, building value here. A little pop of the volume right there. I don't see any headlines as of yet. But on that pop, if you had that volume coming down here and it looked like that again, that's probably a good long. But the volume seems to be up here at 163 and held price down. Want to have a banger day, guys. Come on, let's have a banger. But I need a banger opportunity. Mm-hmm. Not a whole lot going on in the news flow. Getting buyer absorption, which is good. I just want more evidence to add to my long position here, or at least build another long position. Yeah, we got stopped out at the 161, which again was aggressive. It was a little too aggressive. But we did it because we kind of went outside the range. We're extending the range of distribution, and then bearish order flow came immediately in. Right? It wasn't a high like this, where the order flow keeps it up and keeps lifting price. But it looked more like that. Yeah, looser stop. But because it looked like that, we tightened the stop. And this gradual taper here of this distribution right now is probably not ideal. For like an imbalance, a true imbalance trend day, it does not really look like this. You would have had the initial value range, the break of it, a low volume area, built volume really fast, and then broke it again. You probably would not just be sitting here at 164 for so long. But like if we have a strong attempt down into 159s at this large order here at 159 that gets quickly bought up on good volume, yeah, we're going long. But I'm not longing here at the highs. I don't want to be this precarious with my long. But the order flow still absolutely remains bullish. So crude inventories forecast was negative 2 million barrels. Instead, we built 2 million barrels. That's good. So yeah, I want to see a test down here though, a little bit lower. A lot of volume coming in. You don't want the volume to hold price down. That comes in down here. You want it to lift price in, and you want it to do it pretty quickly. Yeah, that's not ideally what you were looking for. All right, you want quick rejections. Like you're resisting the lower part of this upper distribution here, right? Anytime we come below this POC at 162, and I say POC, but it's just the mean of this upper distribution here at 162, you're rejecting it, right? But you're doing it in a haphazard way. You're not like snapping right back out of it on strong volume. You're just like, yeah, maybe, no. All right, how about back up here? So I don't like the way that looks for a long at the moment. You're getting the mixes of the order flow here. You're getting bullish signals and you're getting bearish signals. Opposed to what was happening down here when we did the first long, the first quarter piece, is that this is mostly all just bullish towards the top of the range. Yeah, I mean, I do think we eventually do break this. And the longer we spend here, the more volume we build here. It's a sudden volume inflection. Let's see what happens. Because this can turn a bullish narrative into an extraordinarily bullish narrative, right? If there's a quick, heavy attempt to move prices lower and you can't do it and you can't move back into value, you're now going up. All right, lots of volume coming in. All right, you can't get back into the value area. Let's see if a bunch of volume comes in here again and lifts. You want the volume to lift price right here. Your stop will be right down here at 153. But I want us back outside of value pretty quickly. The last little flicker right there, where all the volume came in right there. I mean, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Let's put a limit at 158.75. Ah. Stop 153. Quarter position. Right above this volume is my limit. Okay, so 158.75. We don't want to see it resist right here. And any attempt lower into value, I want to see volume come in and lift it. Otherwise, this trade is negated. But we had volume come in here right at the value area high and lift price out pretty quickly. So we're pretty quick rejections. And the fact that we didn't quickly reject up here at 165, it's not a bad trade, I don't think. But again, we don't want to see it resist this area. Tight stop, 153. Quarter position. All right, you want to see volume coming in now, shoot this back out. Otherwise, we're done with this trade. Yeah, we could already be done. We'll try to get out on a rotation up. Yeah. All right, I'll limit it at 156 and not even going to get it. We're going to get stopped out before we get back up, rotate back up. All right, cancel the limit at 156. The volume coming in here at the bottom. Why this isn't now the POC is beyond me. I feel like the majority of the volume was there, but no large sells, no large buys came in. Any attempt to get outside value, if we have volume coming in here and keep us from getting outside of value again, we're done with the long. All right, but this is bullish order flow down here. All right, all the volume that's coming in on the bid, you see it's all on the bid down here, and it just lifts price. So we came really close to getting stopped on that one. Our stop was 153. We came in within a tick, I think. That happens more times than I would like to admit. So for us to add now, okay, we need to see all attempts to get back into value fail and heavy volume coming in to lift price. All right, so if we get a test down here, heavy volume comes in and quickly rejects price out of value, we'll add. And then we'll look for a break of the highs. And we're in at 58.75. And now essentially any test of this low volume area that gets rejected quickly is an add. Right? We should absolutely now not want to come below this. Okay, we were in this value range, right? This is the tested range we were in. You made the test out of that range to get back into the prior range and quickly rejected it, and now are back in this range. You're now going to test a higher range and possibly even test a break of that range. So volume came in at the POC, pushed things down. If we get volume that comes in here and lifts price up, we're adding. I mean, our stop can be now 156 on the quarter position. Well, let's see if volume now comes in here and lifts price back up into this range. Times at 1038. Yeah, kind of just like that. I don't care that there's absorption. 61.5 limit. Trying to get up to a half position here. Okay. Now our half position average price is 160.25 at the bottom of this distribution. I like it. Full stop 156. I like that too. All right, we should have absolutely no interest in coming back into this range. Absolutely no interest. I want us to see now make an attempt and break the highs. You're getting flips of the absorption, right? Buyers were broken, sellers were broken right here. This is bullish order flow at the moment. All this is pretty much bullish other than this right here. Pretty much all this is bullish. This you can interpret a little both ways, but there's a lot of volume that came down here. It's just not the POC, which it wasn't the most volume. All right, so still in average price and a half position at 160.25. I won't go full position unless we break this range. I don't want to move my stop to break even just yet either. Once we get to the highs here, I'll move to break even. We get up to 165-ish. Right, because we get up to 165, you're not going to want to come below the POC. If this auction is complete, you tested the lower end of the range, you're not going to want to migrate back down here below the POC again. So having to stop at 161-ish is, I think, okay. It might be too tight. So 160, and you give up a quarter of profit. Right, so I'm happy with a full stop at 160 now. Now that we're testing the top of this range. Now I do expect the break. Volume's coming in towards the top of the range, and it is suppressing price. That's pretty bearish right there. So now we should hopefully see some resistance to 162. We should see volume come in here and lift price. Stop is at 160. So if it stops here, right, if it goes below this POC, yeah, I mean, the trade is pretty much dead, I think. All right, so you got the volume coming in at 162. That's what you wanted, but now you want to quickly reject price, and it's not, and you're going to get stopped. So we'll lose a quarter point in profit if it hits 160. And there, she doesn't want to do it. She doesn't want to do it. Come on, volume, come in, lift, 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 lift. This stop is too tight. Now that I'm looking at it. Yeah, all right, so out at 160. But I just really don't think you would make it too far below this, right? Because this is the range, I think, right here. This 160 range to 166. This is pretty bearish order flow that happened up here. But you have bullishness down here. If it was truly bullish, you would resist this. Any volume that comes in here would lift price. And it's just, it's not. This is more ranged. The weekly distribution is, again, very clean on this ledge here. From 160 down to 150. But let's see what happens as it maybe potentially tries to test back in the value range for the week again, and then maybe rejects it again. But I'm going to go use the restroom real quick, hopefully before that happens. Yeah, that's not what you want to see if you're bullish on this. Absolutely not. And I now think this value area that we've defined for the daily distribution is just very misleading. All right, because there's just pretty much just as much volume down here as there is up here, and this is technically the POC. So I mean, this is just a very normalized distribution. I think ultimately what we are doing is we are just finding balance just above where we found balance on Monday, which is good because you're not immediately rejecting these price levels, right? 160 and above. Like we've been here for several days now, and we're just kind of bumping up against it. And how it becomes kind of similar to like a situation like this. It's like, yeah, you tested it multiple times and rejected it, but you also rotated it several times just beneath the level, and the rejections weren't exactly quick and clean. So the bigger thesis is that you do just continue price discovery higher. I don't think any of that has changed based off what we've seen today. Like, sure, we've run into some resistance up at 165, but we've bumped up here multiple times. And we don't seem to be really getting back into the range that we established this morning, right? With the highs at 153-ish, right? We're rejecting that for the most part. We're not getting back into that range just yet. This pretty mixed order flow, lean into the bearish side, right? The volume's coming in and it's holding down price. Volume came in, didn't really lift price all aggressively. All right, volume's coming in and it's holding price. So strong possibility bears just aren't willing today to extend this very far. It's kind of a precarious situation. All right, we don't really know what the developments in Iran are going to be this week. We don't know if there's going to be any peace negotiations come Friday. Having a ceasefire extension of 3 to 5 days, right, is very ambiguous. Well, what the hell does that even mean? So volume coming in, again, is suppressing price. Right, if I was just purely an order flow trade and I wasn't looking at the auction and where we are and where we've trended to and where the balance range are, the order flow tells you should be short right here, right in this low volume area. All right, because we had this range and we've now falling out of this range, and the order flow seems to want to keep you out of this upper range. All right, so if I was purely an order flow trader, it's short in here and then maybe looking for profit down here, perhaps at 149, 150. It's not a trade I'm going to take today, just given what time it is. It's 10:47. We've really just been hitting break even today. Overall thesis remains price discovery moves higher based off what the distribution has done over the last couple of days. But the order flows, it's just absolutely mixed up here in the 160s. You're struggling to get back up into that range. And all the activity here is on the offer. The volume that comes in isn't necessarily pushing price away all that strongly. It's holding price at a minimum. Yeah, I don't really foresee where the next possible trade opportunity would be. Other than a risky short here at 162 down to 150. Stops just above the highs. But you now have slightly bullish order flow going up into the POC and the prior range. If the market was going to reject it, the volume's going to come in right here. Right where it is. And this rejection of this low volume area wasn't all that strong. All right, we said this bar could be kind of interpreted two ways. All right, a little mixed signal. This was also a little bit of a mixed signal. But granted, this is also kind of a mixed signal because the volume is right where it closed. So it held price, it didn't lift it, but it didn't reject it either necessarily. So I have no intention of re-engaging along here. No intention of re-engaging a short, just because I'm not sure where good defined levels are at the moment that we can trade from, right? Because this value area is very misleading now, right? We're now back within value. But I'd almost say the value area is really from 64 down to like 46. It's not skewed this high up on the distribution. Yeah, markets are definitely slowing down. Not a lot of volume being built here. Very slowed rotations. Yeah, we'll just hang out for another 10 minutes, see what happens. Some sellers at 154 and 155 and a quarter. They're underwater. And the general theme continues. You got to trap the big guys first before you can move the market. But there were buyers at 162 and a half and 159. Yeah, pretty mixed order flow signals here near the POC at 162. I wouldn't do anything with it. Not going to short it, not going to long it. I mean, potentially we just bang around this area for the rest of the day. All right, we're trying to find balance here to potentially make a launch later in the week or next week. But we're not quickly rejecting these highs. So we got some bearish order flow coming in here. Right, I said that potentially there is a scalp here from this area down to 150s. If you get through this low volume area, which, you know, odds are you probably can. But this is a pretty classical move right here. The rejection of the point of control. The auction is complete. The rotation slowed. Now you look to test the bottom of the range again. But again, not tradable because it doesn't really match the overall trade thesis that I have, or call it auction theory distribution thesis, is that we're kind of doing a price discovery move higher to find balance. And if you can't find balance, you're going to settle back around 150 today. So what it could have done in that short right there from 162. Order flow pretty bearish, but we'll see if you reject this again. See the volume coming in and it's lifting price. Like bulls have been willing to defend 154 for the time being. It's not a great defense. They come in, they're willing to absorb. They're not taking the initiative to really drive price higher. So as we suspected, might get through this and then get down to 150. If you did short this, your stop is now somewhere up here, 158s, I think. Slightly trending down ever since like 10:20 this morning. Lower highs, lower lows. Volume coming in, lifting price in that area again. So that'd be now like looking to scratch your trade, take profit if you shorted this from 161, 162. Because any volume that came in here, you'd want it to suppress price, not lift price. $10.54. Oh, it's gonna be a beautiful day today. Spring, I think, is officially here in Michigan. I've said that many times before. Yeah, that's not bullish. Not at all. Not at the bottom of the range for the volume coming in to kind of hold down price. That's pretty bearish order flow if it closes below this. Or it could just be bullish. All right, that was pretty bullish. That's bullish at the moment. It's a bullish until it's bearish, folks. So generally, we had a very good read of the market. It's just that the market didn't really move in extraordinary ranges for us to profit heavily from it. I think at the end of the day, we're break even. I'll check the report when we're done, but I think it's break even. I don't think our account balance really moved that much today. But the market didn't move that much today. I mean, a range from 166 to 142, a 20-point range. I mean, that's very tight. And you're starting to do a little bit of a wedge here because you're not breaking 153, but you're making lower highs. So you either break the 153s or you're going to break the downward trend line, it looks like. Yeah, I'm still resisting this low volume area at 154. Volume comes in and lifts price. Like part of me wants to stab along here, but it's 1056. I can't do it. Yeah, I definitely stab along here at 56. Look for a high run again. Or you're just not able to get past this level. Now the volume comes in, it's just lifting price here. You get above 158, I easily see you making 165. But you got to make it above this low volume area here at 158, 159. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think the rest of this day is just, I think it's just a balanced day. I don't think the market's going to do anything crazy. Five, yeah, you know, I wouldn't mind along here. If this wasn't as close as it is to 11 o'clock, I wouldn't mind putting a little piece on right here. And then if it came up back here into this upper distribution range and then resisted the 159s from the top side, you can add to it and take a quarter of it off at 165. But there's also the potentially that we just break right through this lower resistance here. Because we're getting overlapped rotations now. This isn't a quick rejection of this area. These were quicker rejections. This is not a quick rejection by any stretch of the imagination. So I would keep this trade very small. But all the volume that comes in at 155 lifts price. So it's not a bad trade. Not a bad trade if you take it. One more minute. Well, at least the internet held up today. Kind of sucks they chopped the cable right in half right in the middle of the trading session yesterday. It's kind of annoying. They also hit a water line at the same time. What are you going to do? Yeah, I think you make another run at 165 here. But we're not going to trade just because I got to go. Other things to take care of. All right. Well, I hope you all have a great day. I hope you all come back tomorrow and trade again. Be on around 9:30. I think there are some economic releases tomorrow. Yeah, initial jobless claims, PMIs. Yep. And those are 9:40 from 9:30 to 9:45. Starting at 8:30, going to 9:45. So good economic releases tomorrow. So hopefully we can get a drivable market, and prices now moving up. Yeah. I mean, our reads today, the market was pretty solid. I got to admit, it's pretty solid. It's just in the market didn't really move all that much. And we needed confirmation on order flow before entry. So we always didn't get the greatest entry price, but at least everything was break even. So, all right, folks, hope you have a great day. God bless y'all, and we'll see you bright.